Kengan Ashura has very few villains that challenge the protagonist. Of course, many of the fighters in the Kengen Association serve as direct obstacles to Tokita Oma, but these characters do not oppose Oma's values, because despite their different motivations, they all seek the same thing, to be the strongest. So in that sense, the many characters that Oma faced in Ashura are not villains, but rivals in pursuit of the same title. However, there are two characters in particular who come close to being villains: Kiryu Setsuna and Raian. Setsuna does not seek power for the sake of becoming the strongest. Rather, he seeks power to make his twisted delusions a reality. Those delusions being an ideal version of Oma who accepted his godhood through the possessing spirit. Due to his motivation, Setsuna was a villain because his ideals jeopardized Oma's values, as the burden of possessing spirit stopped him from getting any stronger. If Setsuna tried to prevent Oma from achieving his goals, then Raian mocked it. As an entrant of a tournament which provided participants an opportunity to claim the title of strongest, Raian treated the Kengen Annihilation Tournament as a farce by dominating his opponents with nothing but brute force, proving the futility of those seeking power by showing them who's really at the top. Since Oma is one of those characters who faithfully sought that title, Raian was in opposition to his values, and their mats served to symbolize their ideological conflict. Although Setsuna and Raian have proven themselves as villains by opposing the values of the protagonist, their role was very short-lived. Setsuna has since moved on from his fixation of the possessing spirit, and views such techniques as pathetic aberrations, while Raian became Oma's rival. Thus, these two never quite became major villains because they developed in different ways. Therefore, for a certain period of time, Setsuna and Raian were merely minor antagonists that Oma managed to overcome. Damn shame, because these two were responsible for Oma's development, as they were the ones who supplied the conflict that enabled him to change. That is precisely the reason we have villains. They test the protagonist and serve as obstacles that will help them evolve by providing a dose of adversity. Thankfully, they are no longer in short supply. Welcome to my channel, you can call me Moz. Since Kengan Ashura, 3 evils have been dwelling in the shadows, and only until Omega have they finally decided to make their move. These evils being the Westward Faction, the Worm Secret Society, and the infamous Tokita Niko. In the events to come, these 3 will make a big impact and will surely influence our cast of characters. In this video, I will be outlining their interests along with the challenges that our protagonist must confront in order to overcome them. 1300 years ago, the Wu clan of China split apart into 3 groups: the Kurei that migrated to Japan, the Wu that continued to stay in China, and the Westward Faction that migrated throughout the Western world. Unlike the Kurei and Wu that maintain a fateful alliance, the Westward Faction went rogue, mounting assaults on their own ilk and performing taboos forbidden in the other clans. Their actions are indicative of a single goal: the extermination of the Kurei and Wu clans. As the head of the Westward Faction, Edward Wu shares this sentiment, believing it's his duty to dispose of the fakes, the antiques, and those who evolved incorrectly. Thus, the Westward Faction is an affront to the existence of the Kurei clan, who pride themselves on their survival of the fittest mentality. Therefore, the Westward Faction is a threat to Kiryu and Raian, the pinnacle of his clan's Darwinism. To resolve this conflict, Raian will have to crush their delusional dogma by splitting Edward in half. But that is easier said than done. Unlike the underground fighting scene, Edward will never face his opponents in a fair fight. Rather, he will place his enemies in unwinnable situations. Even so, if Raian is successful in divorcing Edward from his life subscription, that will not be enough to protect the Kure clan. After all, Edward Wu is not an individual, but the vessel of Wu Hei, the first Wu born 5,000 years ago. Through the process of Hei Sung, Wu Hei's ego has persisted till the modern era and currently inhabits the body of Edward Wu and others that serve as his substitutes. Therefore, even if Raian splits Edward a new one, as long as there's one vessel left who can perform Hei Sung, the values of Edward and his Westward Faction will be immortalized, and the conflict will never end. Thus, the challenge that Raian will have to confront is figuring out how to exterminate Wu Hei's ego, because despite his undeniable power and martial prowess, it will make no difference against an immortal opponent. Furthermore, considering their unfair strategies, Raian, for the first time in his life, will have to fight alongside other people. Besides Oma, Raian doesn't respect anyone, not even his own flesh and blood. For example, during Katsumasa's invasion of the Kengen Association, Raian told his siblings to leave him alone as he confronted Katsumasa's forces. Although they were hardly a challenge, and Raian likes to indulge in one-sided domination, his dismissal of his siblings showcases what little respect he has for them. But times have changed. Compared to Katsumasa's forces, Wu Hei's ego is something that he cannot defeat with brute force alone. Therefore, in order to preserve his livelihood, Raian will have to cooperate with his family to track down every last vessel, because despite his skill, he is not much of an assassin. Although Raian will do so begrudgingly, this is the type of development that only a good villain can provide. By challenging his values and providing him an obstacle that he cannot confront by himself, Edward and his Westward Faction will surely cause Raian to develop into a more mature character. As for our next evil, the character they target will not be given such a privilege. Tracing its roots to ancient China, the Worm is a secret society that has been discreetly pulling the strings in global conflicts for millennia by infiltrating every known institution. Whether it be the Kengan Association or their competition, where there exists conflict, the Worm is always involved. However, their interest in such a field does not stem from the proxy war between companies, but the appearance of Gao Ryuki. Although the interests of the Worm remain mysterious, the actions of Naidan Monkbot make them abundantly clear. During Naidan's deathmatch with Ryuki, he says the following statement: "Congratulations, Omega. Now the future is connected. You must lead us, Connector." End quote. Although I congratulate Naidan for making a reference to the title of the series, he refers to Ryuki as a connector, and within the context of Hei Sung, the connector is an individual who becomes a vessel for someone's ego. Since Naidan is a member of the Worm Secret Society, his words are indicative of their interest, turning Ryuki into a vessel. However, that is easier said than done, because Ryuki hates the Worm. Due to being raised by Gamukaku, Ryuki believes that the worms are evil subhuman pests that are better dead than alive. So, through the traditional method of Hei Sung, which requires the connector to listen to the speaker, Ryuki would never cooperate and would most likely send the speaker to Valhalla. Therefore, the worm cannot rely on the Wu clan's primitive taboo. Instead, they searched for ways of making Heisung more efficient by gathering information from people pushing the bounds of neuroscience and technology. For example, the worm funded Yamashita Kenzo's cyberbrain in exchange for certain data. The contract ran faithfully until they had attained enough information, cutting all ties to Kenzo and his company. Although Kenzo keeps this data vague, the information the worm was looking for revolved around one topic: mind uploading. Before Kenzo, the worm sponsored Bando Yohei, requesting he provide them research on his mind uploading technology. Through its namesake alone, mind uploading technology would most likely serve to upload someone's mind into a piece of technology. Therefore, a parallel can be made between Heisung and Bando's research. They both transfer the ego of an individual into a medium, but through different methods. While Heisung requires a speaker to tell their life story again and again and again, mind uploading technology could enable a vessel to download the ego of another, transferring identities in much less time and effort than Heisung. Therefore, the efforts of the worm to sponsor these researchers has helped them revolutionize the process, enabling them to turn even the most non-cooperative individuals into a vessel. So, the worm now has the means of achieving their goal. Now, all they have to do is capture Ryuki. Although Ryuki is a tough customer, there is reason to believe that the worm will be successful. For example, due to the influence of Narashima Koga, Ryuki adopted morals, vowing that he will not game end his enemies, even if they are members of the worm. However, these morals have caused him to hesitate when confronted by more powerful worms like Naidan who have tried to kill him. Since Ryuki has yet to seal up his internal conflict, his hesitation will provide the worm an opportunity to capture him. Furthermore, the worm will take advantage of Ryuki's connections. For example, in order to lure his quarry into a trap, Xiaji was going to eliminate both Kazo and Koga. Since Ryuki cares about his friends, he will do whatever it takes to protect them. However, Ryuki's options are limited. Since the Kurei clan are going to be preoccupied with the Westward Faction, and Oma is going to confront the demon of his past, the two guardians who protected his friends will no longer be available. Furthermore, due to his vow to not eliminate people, Ryuki is placed in a situation where he is incapable of eliminating the worm. Therefore, Ryuki's only option will be to surrender, because if he unleashes his bloodlust, he will have betrayed his moral code, and if he follows it, he will not be able to defend his loved ones. Unlike Raian, Ryuki is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Thus, he will not be given the opportunity to develop. After all, while Ryuki is conflicted, his opponent is steadfast and meticulous. Therefore, Ryuki's fate is sealed. As for our next evil, the character they target is the almighty Tiger's Vessel himself. Let's talk about the infamous Tokita Niko. Born in the inside, the infamous Tokita Niko began his life as a nameless orphan who caught the attention of Gao Mukaku. Having been deemed to possess an aptitude for combat, Mukaku took him underneath his wing and alongside other orphans was taught the Niko style. Much like his companions, the nameless orphan was given the name Tokita Niko, and once his training was complete, he was sent across the inside to impress upon its residents the entity of a single legendary figure. However, Niko lost interest in his master's ambition, losing his faith in his Niko style and believing that it's in need of some serious evolution. Thus, Niko began using people as test subjects, collecting data on powerful techniques that surpass human limitations. These actions all suggest one thing: Tokita Niko wants to get stronger. In his thirst for power, Niko taught Kiryu Setsuna the techniques of the Niko style alongside a new secret technique. By giving Setsuna considerable martial might, Niko sent Setsuna on the path of fulfilling his own delusions. Then, in their less than faithful encounter, Tokita Niko forcefully awakened the possessing spirit within Oma, enabling Setsuna to fulfill his fantasies by activating it in their subsequent meeting. But, due to Oma's inexperience with the possessing spirit, he went on a rampage, contributing to the death of his master who fought to save his pupil. But, unfortunately, after saving Oma, he fell to the combined might of the infamous Tokita Niko and Taira Genzan. Although Oma forgot many details about the incident due in part to the possessing spirit, Oma is now aware of the truth, and since Tokita Niko is currently alive, our protagonist now has a reason to seek revenge. However, Niko's actions are out of character because killing Oma's master doesn't fulfill his interest of becoming stronger. Rather, it only served to give Oma a vested interest in pursuing him. Therefore, Niko's motivation for killing Oma's master was to lure Oma out. So, a question must be asked. Why is Tokita Niko so interested in Oma? Well, let's take a look at Faye's final remarks. As an individual who failed to become the Tiger's vessel, Faye graciously congratulated Oma for inheriting the position. According to Faye, the Tiger's vessel is any practitioner of the Niko style who is acknowledged by Tokita Niko. As the lucky individual who gets his endorsement, they receive his knowledge and technique. Besides Niko himself, Oma is the last practitioner of the Niko style, and via process of elimination, was the only person in the world capable of being his Tiger's vessel. However, after coming to a maddening conclusion that sent him into a rage, Faye states the following: "The Tiger's vessel, it was you all along," in reference to Oma. In his final moments, Faye says that the position belonged to Oma from the get-go, not only making his ambition obsolete, but his previous definition of the Tiger's vessel incorrect, because it was never a title that could be afforded to any practitioner of the Niko style, unless you're Oma. So, we need a new definition. By its namesake alone, the Tiger's vessel is a vessel. Therefore, a parallel can be made with the Wu clan's Haste Song. If a connector serves as the vessel for someone's ego, then the Tiger's vessel must also serve the same purpose. Since the tiger is in reference to Tokita Niko, the Tiger's vessel is someone who will contain Tokita Niko's personality. Since the worm has perfected mind uploading technology, Tokita Niko could make anyone his vessel. But if Niko wants to get stronger, why pick Oma over someone like Faye? Although Oma is profoundly skilled, Faye has more potential than Oma when it comes to the secret techniques. However, unlike Faye, Oma is entitled to organ farming services. Despite Faye's unnatural tolerance of the secret techniques, he was unable to fully resist the burden as his organs failed to keep him alive. So, considering the dangers associated with the secret techniques, the only way to overcome the risk is to have spare organs. Thanks to the Worm's secret society and their efforts to infiltrate other institutions, they can clone individuals and culture organs. Since Oma has been cloned before, and even given a new heart to replace his old one, Oma can theoretically use the possessing spirit without suffering the drawbacks, because he will always be supplied a new heart. With all that being said, Niko needs Oma, as that is the only way for him to get stronger. But the best part is that Oma is coming straight for him. Since Oma was enraged by his mere visits and nearly went after him after fighting Roland, his judgment will be clouded. Therefore, Niko's manipulation has paid off, because Oma's raids will make his manhunt a whole lot easier. But there is one way to overcome this conflict. Don't chase after him. In Ashura, Oma had made peace with his past, and since his new lease on life in Omega, Oma grew content with just fighting. Despite fighting every day since the day he was brought into this world, it's the only thing that makes his life worth living. But now, against an opponent who intends on taking his life to fuel his own ambition, Oma needs to understand that if he runs after Niko in a rage, he runs the risk of never getting a second chance ever again. It's either run after Niko and become a vessel for someone else, or continue living and face him when you're prepared to fight. Ultimately, this is a decision that Oma must come to on his own, because as he is now, nobody has the power to convince him. As a tournament manga, many characters who are obstacles to the protagonist are rivals seeking the same thing. But Kengen is an exception. In the past, Sandrovich has established characters who are not simply rivals, but actual villains who oppose the protagonist. But compared to Kengan Ashura, Kengan Omega might as well be a golden age, because the writer is challenging his characters in new and interesting ways, besides just giving them a new strong character that they can defeat. Sir, Roland Donire was a red herring, but what we got in exchange is a faction that cannot be defeated no matter how many times you tear their leader apart, a syndicate that cannot be dismantled unless you abandon your moral code, and a despicable individual who cannot be bested unless you're perfectly calm. With this lineup, we are bound to see some major development among our main cast, and for better or for worse, we will witness their paths unfold. Thanks for watching.